Living alone had always been my preference. I liked the quiet, the solitude, the feeling of having a space that was entirely mine. My apartment was my sanctuary, perched on the edge of the city, with a view that stretched out to the horizon. It was a place where I could escape from the world, where nothing could disturb me. Or so I thought. It was a cold winter night, and the wind howled outside, making the windows rattle. I was lying in bed, drifting off to sleep, when the shrill ring of my phone shattered the silence. Groggy and annoyed, I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. It was exactly midnight. I reached for the phone, half expecting it to be a wrong number. But as I answered, a chilling voice, distorted and raspy, whispered from the other end, "I'm coming for you." My heart skipped a beat. I hung up immediately, my mind racing. It had to be a prank, I told myself. Some idiot with too much time on their hands. But the voice, it felt too real, too menacing. I shook off the unease and tried to go back to sleep, but the voice lingered in my thoughts, like a shadow I couldn't escape. The next night, at the stroke of midnight, the phone rang again. My stomach churned as I picked it up, dread pooling in my chest. The same voice, more sinister this time, whispered the same words, "I'm coming for you." I hung up, my hands shaking. This was no coincidence. Someone was targeting me, but who? And why? The fear gnawed at me, making sleep impossible. I reported the calls to the police, hoping they could trace the number or at least offer some kind of explanation. But the calls came from an untraceable number, leaving me with no answers and a growing sense of dread. Determined to end the torment, I changed my phone number. For a few days, the silence returned, and I started to feel a semblance of peace. But on the fourth night, as the clock struck midnight, the phone rang again. The same distorted voice, now more familiar, whispered, "I'm getting closer." A chill ran down my spine. How had they found my new number? Panic set in as I realized this wasn't just a prank. Someone was watching me, tracking my every move. I started to notice shadows outside my window, fleeting glimpses of movement in the corner of my eye. Footsteps echoed behind me in the hallway, but every time I turned around, no one was there. I installed security cameras, hoping to catch the intruder, but the cameras never recorded anything unusual. It was as if the caller knew exactly how to evade them. The calls continued, every night at midnight, each one more terrifying than the last. "I saw you today," the voice would say. "You looked scared." Sleep became a distant memory. My life was consumed by fear, every moment a waking nightmare. The caller's voice haunted me, filling my mind with a constant gnawing dread. I became a prisoner in my own home, afraid to leave, afraid to stay. One night, the voice changed. It was no longer distorted, no longer a stranger. It was familiar, achingly familiar. "Remember me, Mark?" it said. "It's Tom. I've been waiting for this moment." Tom. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Tom had been my friend years ago, a troubled soul who had disappeared mysteriously. We had grown up together, shared our secrets, our dreams. But Tom had always been different, haunted by demons I could never understand. He had a dark side, an obsession with death and the macabre. He used to talk about how he would come back for me someday, how he would make me pay for leaving him behind. I had dismissed his words as the ramblings of a disturbed mind, but now, hearing his voice, so clear, so real, I knew he had meant every word. Desperate to understand, I searched for any information about Tom's disappearance. I found an old newspaper article detailing his death in a psychiatric hospital. He had been institutionalized after a series of violent outbursts, his mind unraveling until he was lost in a world of his own making. The article mentioned that in his final days, he had become obsessed with me, blaming me for his descent into madness. The realization hit me hard. Tom had found a way to reach me from beyond the grave, his tormenting voice a manifestation of his twisted obsession. The calls were his revenge, his way of making me suffer as he had suffered. That night, the phone rang again. My hands trembled as I picked it up, bracing myself for what was to come. "I'm here, Mark," Tom's voice whispered. "Open the door." My blood ran cold. I heard a knock on my apartment door, soft at first, then louder, more insistent. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the door, fear gripping me like a vice. I peered through the peephole, expecting to see nothing, but the hallway was empty. The knocking continued, louder and more frantic. Summoning all my courage, I opened the door, but no one was there. The hallway was empty, silent. I turned back into my apartment, my mind racing. The phone lay on the floor, the caller ID flashing Tom. It rang again, and when I answered, the voice was closer, more menacing. "I'm inside." Panic surged through me. I spun around, scanning the apartment, but it was empty. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The room grew cold, and I felt a presence, something dark and malevolent, watching me. Tom's voice echoed from all around, filling the room with his sinister laughter. "You can't escape me, Mark." The lights went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and the last thing I heard before everything went black was Tom's voice, laughing maniacally.